Hello and welcome to cricketnews.com's coverage of the IPL 2020. And in this video, we'll be talking about perhaps one of the most loved franchise, one of the most admired franchises. Their opponents on opening day might disagree with me on that, but I think we could widely regard CSK, the Chennai Super Kings, as a franchise that no matter where your allegiances are, you would go on to admire them for all their success, for their leader, for what they've stood for over the years, for the kind of team they are. Chennai Super Kings is a darling of this league, and they've not just been a darling, they've also had success, 3-time champions of course. Until last year they were the most successful franchise. Strictly speaking, in terms of titles, they were on par with the Mumbai Indians, but Mumbai have just sneaked ahead, haven't they? And I'm sure Chennai will be waiting to pull them back as soon as they get an opportunity. But the questions on this franchise have always been there. They've always had to answer certain questions. There have always been these certain narratives off the field, and this time as well. Before this team began building up towards IPL 2020, before they left for the UAE and they assembled in Chennai, before 15th August at 19:29 hours, the narrative was completely different. We were all talking about Mahendra Singh Dhoni and how will he respond to this IPL? Will he be able to sort of make those runs? Will he be able to bring out the best version of himself to get a place back in Team India? But that's out of the way. That is gone now, and Mahendra Singh Dhoni is solely devout to the Chennai Super Kings now. That's the only place where his focus will be, and so that conversation's out the window. But there's another narrative that has emerged, which is about Chinnathala. So Suresh Raina, for now, is not going to be part of the Chennai Super Kings, and what that does is, of course, he's one of the leaders of the team, second in command, of course, when Thala's not operation, but also when Thala is there, he's an important figure. But also, apart from that, he is an important batsman in that lineup, a left-hander, and you don't really have a lot. I'll come to that a little later, but that is the question, and that is the narrative that CSK have to answer as they enter into IPL 2020, and the way they take on MI on opening day of IPL 2020 will give us a lot of answers. However, when you take a look at the squad, when you take a look at who they are, it's very easy to forget that this team is made up of absolute stalwarts. They've been called the Dad's Army, they've been called a number of names, but they've somehow gotten overshadowed because of the presence of Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the presence of the other narratives. There are big names here. You look at the Bravos, the Watsons, the Faf du Plessis of the world, the Imran Tahirs. Franchisees would pay a big amount of money to get these folks to play for them in any league in the world. And CSK have them all under one umbrella, and to be honest, they're all very happy under this umbrella. So it's very easy to forget that this team is actually made up of stalwarts and just to focus on one person or two people. But that's who this team is. They're a wonderful team on paper, despite them being experienced. I say despite, but I'm a big advocate of experience. I think it's that narrative of T20 being a young man's format is absolutely pointless, and I think experience now is beginning to show its true worth in this format. Imran Tahir, take a look at Imran Tahir. He's been absolutely invaluable. DJ Bravo again has been absolutely invaluable across every league he's played. Has had a wonderful CPL and is now coming in at the back of that. So I think their experience is a blessing and not really a bane. And I think CSK fans will take respite in that, will take refuge in that rather. So let's take a look at the probable 11, right? So now without Suresh Raina, there's a hole there. And let me go on to explain what that hole is. If Raina doesn't come back in time, in after a few games, you'd realize that until Ravindra Jadeja, who comes into bat at 7-ish, there's no left-hander. So here's what the top 5 can be like. So you look at Watson, Rayudu, Murli Vijay probably coming in, Faf du Plessis, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, Kedar Jadhav, and then comes Ravindra Jadeja. So there's no left-hand option there. So if a team's playing a left-arm spinner, a left-arm orthodox spinner and a leg spinner, this team could face a lot of problems, and we know that MS Dhoni does not truly fancy the leg spinners. The same with Faf du Plessis, the same with a couple of others as well. So that I think is a big area of concern for me for Chennai. But then you know that this team is capable of finding solutions. So I obviously laid out my top 5 there, but let me do it again. So here's my probable Chennai 11, right? You have Watson and Ryder to open. Murli Vijay comes in at 3. Faf du Plessis becomes an important addition at 4. Mahendra Singh Dhoni at 5. Jadhav comes in later. And then you have Jadeja, Bravo, Chahar, Chawla and Tahir. Now that is an incredibly strong 11. No matter what the surface, no matter what the conditions, this team can go out there and do a lot of damage. And the options they have on the bench is absolutely staggering. Just speaking in terms of the spin bowling options, right? So you have Piyush Chawla, of course, who you think will play. You have Karan Sharma, you have R. Sai Kishore, you have Mitch Santner. Kedar Jadhav can give you a few overs, Ravindra Jadeja can give you a few overs. So the options for CSK in the spin bowling department are absolutely plentiful, and there's nothing for them to worry about. But their strength, right? CSK's strength is in their captain. In a time of crisis, any team or any community, any collection of people looks at their strongest one. It looks at their captain, at their leader. CSK at the moment have a few questions to answer. There's no Harbhajan Singh, there is no Suresh Raina. The experienced Indian statesmen are out of the question, and there's only Thala. In a time like this is where Mahendra Singh Dhoni has always thrived. He's taken on these questions in the past. When he has captained India, when he has captained CSK, Dhoni has always been in the forefront when things haven't gone on well for his team. And you'd leave it to MS Dhoni to figure out a situation, right? So you'd like to think that Mahendra Singh Dhoni will definitely come up with an alternative for these questions. Of course, Suresh Raina is an absentee. Of course, Harbhajan Singh is an absentee. But in conditions like this, where spin bowlers will have a lot to do, and CSK have a great chunk of fantastic experienced spinners, and Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the Chanakya that he is, can play around with them, you'd like to think that CSK could prove to be a team to watch out for, especially because totals will be in and around the 150-160 mark, and in those conditions CSK thrive and they do very well. You'd expect this team to do well. Do not write off CSK.